The best songwriters do something in their lyric writing that I reckon a lot of the standard songwriting advice misses. I'm a producer and a songwriter, and I reckon I've tried like every piece of songwriting advice there is. So a lot of the standard lyric writing advice that I've gotten and that I continue to see popping up all the time is like, start with a title, think about rhyme schemes and like A, B, A, C, whatever patterns, things like power positions and like word maps. And every time I've tried to write songs with those sorts of techniques, it feels like my lyrics are kind of assembled from a kit as opposed to flowing naturally like the songs that I love by great artists. So I want to use this Adrianne Lenker song called Anything as an example of just a great song, but also as a way of showing you some of these techniques, which I think a lot of the standard lyric writing advice is missing. And hopefully through seeing that in action, you'll be able to apply it as well to your own songs. Let's just check out the first verse of Anything to start with.
Staring down the barrel of the hot sun, shining with the sheen of a shotgun. Carol has a little if we need some. Joe has a ride if we wanna come. Hanging in your jeans with a clothespin. Skin still wet, still on my skin. Mango in your mouth, juice dripping. Shoulder of your shirt sleeve slipping.
So the first thing that I noticed there is that she's just writing like she talks. And I haven't met Adrianne Lenker, so I don't know exactly how she talks, but it's very speech-like. There's nothing fancy going on, really. So it feels like it's just a friend talking to you, telling you the story. So that's the first technique I want to talk about, which is really, really simple, and it's just writing like you talk. And it's something I first became aware of in these books, these method writing books by this dude called Jack Grapes. They're mainly about poetry and prose writing, just like novel writing. So the whole thing about method writing is that that's the basic voice, that when you read those books, he encourages you to just get used to writing like you talk. It's actually a lot harder than you think at first, especially if you're like me and you started writing songs in this like songwriter voice where like when I would sit down to write a song, it didn't sound like I sounded when I talked. It sounded more colorful and like lots of metaphor, and the language was a bit fancier, the words were longer and whatever. There's nothing inherently wrong with songwriter voice. It just doesn't quite seem real, like it doesn't quite ring true, where, you know, you listen to the words and you're like, no one talks in that way. And again, that's fine, but like there's something about just writing like you talk. When I listen to that Adrianne Lenker song, it just makes me feel like she's telling me the story and describing these feelings and this situation to me. And I'm not thinking about the fact that it's a song. I'm just in it. I'm just like immersed in it. Yes, there's some rhyme in there. Yes, there's that little wordplay between barrel of the hot sun, but fundamentally, it's just writing like you talk. And I think if you take that as the big picture sort of lesson there, it gets you away from focusing on like rhyme patterns and power positions and stuff like that. And it's like, hey, you could just sit there with your journal and like write down what happened and how you felt about it and describe stuff, and then put those lines in your song. And yes, you can like sculpt it a little more, but it's coming from that natural place and it's just going to feel like you, which is I think what we want. At least it's what I want when I'm writing songs. And when I work with artists, like I want to hear more of them. So let's get into the first chorus and I'll talk about this next technique.
And I don't wanna talk about anything. I don't wanna talk about anything. I wanna kiss your eyes again. Wanna witness your eyes looking. I don't wanna talk about anyone. I don't wanna talk about anyone. I wanna sleep in your car while you're driving. Lay in your lap when I'm crying.
So the most obvious thing about that chorus is that she's using repetition, right? And you might just think, yeah, like repetition in a chorus makes sense. Like I already know that, that's easy. And you'd be right, but method writing, again, it has a different name for this kind of repetition. And it talks about why it's so effective. And it's called read and sung. And read and sung comes from speech writing. So if you can picture like the Gettysburg Address, Abraham Lincoln uses this technique where he repeats the word cannot. So it's like, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. So the repetition of that word cannot creates this kind of rhythmic pulse, and it really like highlights a particular idea, a focal point in a speech or a song. That's the chorus, right? Like that's kind of the focal point of the song if we're thinking about traditional songwriting. So in anything she's repeating, I don't want to talk about anything. I don't want to talk about anything. It's just repetition, right? But when you think about it in this way, what does the repetition actually achieve? Like it highlights this important emotional idea. And I think that's really, really powerful for lyric writing. Because, like the traditional way of thinking about repetition in songwriting, at least that I've heard, is like repeat things so people will remember them, which is part of this. But it's also like repeat things not just from familiarity, but so that emotionally it connects. Like this beating drum of repetition that people kind of get into this trance almost. And it just draws attention to the emotion that she's singing about. And there's a little like hidden thing in there as well where she's using contrast. So she's going, I don't wanna, and then she's saying, I wanna. So it's what she doesn't want to do contrasted with what she does want to do. And that's something you can think about. Contrast is kind of the theme of this video in some ways. We'll get to that in a bit, but like remember the idea of contrast. So let's get into the last verse and I'll talk about the next technique. And this is where it all kind of comes together.
Weren't we the stars in heaven? Weren't we the salt in the sea? Dragging in the new warm mountain. Didn't you believe in me?
So the last verse doesn't really sound like writing like you talk anymore, right? Because no one really says, weren't we the stars in heaven? Weren't we the salt in the sea? It's this other written voice. And method writing has a name for this as well. It's called lost world voice. In my head, I kind of think of it as dream language. Like that's what helps me to like get into that voice. So method writing talks about it being almost like an old world style of talking. So instead of just saying, I looked at the sky, you'd say, I gazed plaintively at the forbidden sky as it cowered with gray clouds that burst with, whatever. So you'd get really descriptive, over the top, you'd use metaphor and like kind of go into songwriter voice, but like even more, just fully overblown. And when she sings Dragon in the New Warm Mountain, that to me is dream language. Like that's just this otherworldly concept that maybe if you're like a huge Big Thief fan, you know what that is. But I just hear that as like, it's like Narnia or something. Like it's this other world that I can only sort of imagine what it is. And when she does that in the last verse, it creates this contrast. And there's that word again. But the contrast between writing like you talk and lost world or dream language and the repetition of read and sung, that creates this drama within the song, right? So it keeps it interesting as a listener. Hi, Tank. Thanks, come to say hello. Contrast is something that we often hear about in relation to melody and production and arrangements and things like that. It's like if your melody is low in the verses, contrast it with a melody that's high in the choruses. All right, thank you. And like as a producer, I'm always thinking about that level of contrast, but you can do it in your lyrics as well. And that's something that I think a lot of the standard lyric writing advice doesn't really talk about. But once you start thinking about that, you'll start to notice it in like so many songs. And again, this is something method writing helped me realize was by varying the written voice, and you can do this intentionally, by varying that written voice, you create this drama within the way that the words are written that goes beyond the drama that's inherent in the story you're telling or the situation or the emotions that you're describing, the song that you're writing, right? And it's really, really powerful. So even if you're an experienced songwriter, I feel like you can get a lot out of these techniques and ideas. And I've made something to help you try some of this stuff. Oh, buddy. It's a free 5-day course. It just gets sent to your email and it just guides you through some of the stuff that I talked about in the video today and a bunch of other stuff. And if you're someone who is constantly starting song ideas but struggling to finish them, I basically made it for you. So give it a try and let me know how you go. If you want to see another video that goes into even more techniques like this is the one to check out next.